Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for submitting your poems this week. I want to dive right in, but I also just want to say about the poem trace. I got really, really excited that you decided to use a Biggie song to trace. My favorite music of all time is early 90s hip hop, 90s hip hop in general. And and it's because of the poetry, it's because of the lyrics, and it's because of the political content that I love it so much. Also, I was born and raised in New York in the late 80s and early 90s. So, of course, this is the music that I'm attracted to. But let's start with your first poem. Let's start with Who's Watching the Children. I want to start with your questions. Did I think it was actually poem like? Since you were just jotting it down, it felt more like a chronological report. And it did feel to me like a chronological report. So the idea with this prompt is to jot this stuff down and then use this to write the poem, right? So these are like your notes, and then you'll write a poem from these notes. So a way to re-enter this would be to reread it a few times and then to perhaps, if you can print it out, circle words or phrases, or if you can do that, if you prefer to do that on the screen, you can highlight certain phrases or bold certain words or phrases. But the idea is to re-enter the text and pick up what you think is the most interesting language that you wrote down in these notes, then transfer those notes to a new page and write a poem from those notes. So right now, this feels like it wants to be a poem, but it's not yet a poem. That's my 2 cents about the form. Um, and when you asked, is your choice of focus too insensitive to other ways of watching children? Nope. I don't think it is. I think noticing that when we're in places and folks are more engaged with technology than they are with the other people around them is really important. Here we are communicating through a screen, and sometimes it's super helpful and it can provide connectivity in ways that would be more challenging in other situations. But I think it's also important for us to actually think about these topics. So, and especially when it comes to kids and it comes to this generation we're raising up, right? I think it's super important. So that's what I would suggest for the first poem. For your second poem, um, I want to say, did your poem feel too short? I mean, I think, what if you trace the whole song? What if you actually include the hook, include the chorus, and say, you know, more details about that, and go ahead and trace the entire form and use repetition in the same way the song uses repetition? I mean, I think that could be really interesting if you have the interest and the time in your rewrite to do that, right? It's like, I recognize sometimes students are experimenting with a prompt for the class and they might not connect with every prompt. So, what I would encourage you to do is, if you feel like you have the enthusiasm and the interest in making this poem longer, then you should follow that instinct. Absolutely. I think this could be really interesting if you did. Um, and what are some things you could have elaborated on content wise? So, I think it's really interesting that you started talking about what's free, what's freedom. And I think you could elaborate on that, right? So, it's like, okay, so TV controlling what we see, not worrying in your sleep, um, tears to smiles. What else? It's like freedom is this huge concept. So, what else can you say about that? Because when you shift to say, I hope my brothers stay free, you take it from this sort of conceptual land into a deeply personal land. And that's good. And that's an interesting term, an interesting turn in a poem. But I want to hear more about it. So tell me more about freedom and what freedom means to you. That's what I would suggest. Um, and I guess I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for your work this week. And I'm really looking forward to reading more of your work. Thanks, Michael.